But this month, we're talking about site audit guides. I've been doing site audits, site health checks, when you call them, for about 10 years now. It's a good chunk of my revenue that comes in. I can switch on and off, as I'll show you when I come in. But I've done close to 500 site audits, probably a little bit over that in the last 10 years. It evolves, it changes, my process changes, but I'm going to go through my current template and process. If it's something that you're not offering, if you're a business, it might be something you want to offer as a client service. Or if you've just got your own website, it'll give you a framework as to how to audit your website and go through. Please ask any questions you've got just as we go through. So number one, cost, time, and deliverables. The number one question I get asked by other freelancers or other people is, how much do you charge? How long does it take you? And what do you deliver? So for time, it takes me between half an hour and 60 minutes to do a complete site audit. Very rare occasion I'll go over an hour. But I've got my process dialed down really quickly. But the average site audit takes roughly half an hour or 40 minutes to do. So I'm doing the audit and I'm updating the document at the same time. When it's finished, the document's complete. So the cost, I charge $497 for a single audit. Now that varies. I started off at 150. I've put it up as close to 1,000. I've still got people buying it, but this price I've currently got is set for when I turn on adverts. So it's the best price range I can find when I'm pushing adverts towards the landing page. Otherwise, I do have an extended site audit if someone's got a really complicated website, and that's closer to the $1,000 price for that one. Deliverables is one PDF audit document and a 20-minute optional Zoom post-audit catch-up, where I can go through the document and they can ask me questions and I can explain my findings, and that's it. So it's a package deal. I thought you might be interested to see my sales process, so rather than just go through the document, show you how I actually generate sales and the whole process from start to end as to how people get to the site audit and they purchase it and how it works. Okay, so that's the carrying the process I have just now. So there's two starting points, and you'll see when I do the next couple of graphics. The first one is on my services page on my website. I offer services. I'm a WordPress developer, a WordPress consultant. So people can find the WordPress audit or site health check, I kind of changed the two, from the services webpage. That redirects to an actual landing page, a sales page, sorry, and that's on Thrivecart. So I used to use WooCommerce for all my stuff, but it was a bit of a headache. I got bogged down with transactions, people doing test cards and all that sort of stuff, and I had to do lots of refunds. So a couple of years ago, I decided to go with Thrivecart. It's a one-time payment. It's separate from WordPress, but it's part of my process now. So that's the actual sales page, Thrivecart. On it, there is a accept terms and conditions checkbox that people have to check. And that's very important. If you're going to do a site audit for somebody other than yourself, you need to cover yourself. So you need to have good legal terms and conditions, because more often than not, you're going to be doing it on a production, a live server. And if things go wrong, you need to be able to point back to your terms and conditions, your liability. Even if you don't do anything and you're on the live website and something else happens, which has happened, they might blame you for it. And again, you want to have legal documentation to cover yourself. So accept terms and conditions, absolute must if you're doing this sort of thing as a service. So once a customer pays, that triggers off a Zapier automation. I love Zapier. I love to automate things. And what that does is it adds it to my CRM, it adds the contact details to the CRM. It adds an invoice to Xero, my accounting package, so I can consolidate that later on when the payment comes through. And it sends an email out to the customers to explain what's happening, an email onboarding. In the email, it points to a secure form on my website. So I've got a password-protected page. The password's in the email. It's got a gravity form that sits in there. So once they go onto the page, then I collect additional information from them. So things like, do you know your cPanel or web hosting details? Yes, no. do you know your Google Analytics or Google logins? Yes, no, that sort of stuff. So I click that private information. I don't want to collect that over email because it's insecure. So that's why I go to a private form. I'll show some screenshots in a bit. So once the form gets submitted, I get an email notification from that. And other than a notice from Thrivecart, that's kind of the first time that I know that someone's interested in doing a website audit. Any question? So they can take photos? Yeah, you can take photos. Yeah, I'll post this presentation link up on the meetup, so you don't have to take photos if you don't want to. Yeah, so the admin email notification from Gravity Forms, the first time I kind of really know that someone's paid and the process has started. What I do is I send them an email. Well, first I look at the details in there, check the login details with the website. If there's anything that I can't log into, then we'll have a conversation and I'll grab those details. And once I'm satisfied that I can log into the website and I've got all the details, I can then schedule and then perform the audit. So I usually schedule a week ahead and then just perform that audit then. So once I'm performing, I deliver the audit in the PDF, and then I follow up with them for a Zoom post-audit chat with them. They don't have to, it's optional. The good thing about this process, if you are selling it as a service, is that because they've already purchased from me, their customer, they are a warm lead. So if you get them onto the Zoom call, you're explaining your findings, what you have to do, what the next steps are, they are a warm lead that you're trying to propose a pitch to. So for additional work, and we'll see how I set the work options in there, that can lead to a work proposal as a new client. So the work that needs to be done as a result of the audit, you can win that as a proposal. A lot easier when you're trying to sell a cold lead. Okay, so that's my entire process. Just now, it does change. I'll take you through some of these pages, not all of them. This is the services site I have on my website. So call to action at the top, a bit about me, so that's a trust element in there. Highlight what their problem is. I notice I used the more that really should be red, but I use like a redder color to highlight like issue. What the solution is, a little bonus because you get a 20-minute Zoom call with me. Another call to action, which is green, so positive again. A process, so I tell people what the process is, a 4-step process. People love to know how we do things. And again, it leads to trust. So all these things are pushing people more to the point of clicking rather than not clicking. Some legal stuff at the bottom, terms and conditions, which obviously, yes. But that's the kind of layout I have just now, and that works really well. I get about a 40% conversion rate on this when people land to it. When they click on one of the buttons, it takes them to this, which is the Thrivecart sales page. So that's a landing page. Now, the main difference between this and the other one is that there's payment on this one. There's no header, there's no footer. There's nothing else they can click on except for buy. So again, a little bit of a psychological part there. But it's following the same copy as well. So you've got call to action at the top. You've got what they're going to get, trust, sample covers. You can actually see what they're getting, a visual part for it there. And then the checkout. So I'm gathering name, email address, business name, where they're located, the ABN or tax number for the invoice, and then the URL to audit. And again, agree to terms and conditions, and they can opt in for my newsletter as well if they want to. So that's it. That's Thrivecart. That's all I've got. It's very simple. That's the entire thing. It's one long page. If I'm running ads, I don't run ads to that page. I run ads directly to this page. Okay, so it'll look like that little picture in the ad. They click through, they go on this page, purely because it's one less step than this one. Okay, the less steps you can get people into a sales pipeline, the better. So I run ads, and the ads target this particular page here. That's my Zapier automation. It's an old one. It's not got the zero stuff in there just now, but it gives you an idea. Thrivecart triggers it, the sale triggers it. The second one is a post to my CRM, so Fluent CRM, where I add a contact or update a contact. Then I'm tagging them with ZPD website audit tags, so I know who's purchased what. I have a delay for about 30 minutes. That's purely because when they go through Thrivecart, it sends them a receipt stuff. So I want them to get the receipt first, and then number 5, I send the onboarding email out to them with all the details about how they can connect. And the last one is a filter by type. If I've checked the newsletter option, then I subscribe them to my newsletter sequence. So that's the automation. I don't have to do anything, which is great. I love that. Here's a form that they get onboarded onto. So the email they get to, they click on that. There's a password. They put in the password, and that's basically to stop spams and bots. What I do is I thank them. Again, a little bit of trust. Step one, I tell them how to set up a WordPress user because I need admin access. You're going to need admin access if you do a WordPress audit. And then step two, I just it actually puts in the order as a read field. It puts in the order ID, so the invoice number, so I can match it up with Thrivecart and Xero. And then again, the website to be audited just in case. This is where, do you know your hosting details? Do you know your Google Analytics details? Yes and no. Just so I kind of know or can gather the information from them.
When do you give the password after they've paid?
No, the password to access this is in the onboarding email that's sent out. Is up here. It says, thanks for purchase. Here's the next process to do. Here's a link to a secure page with the form. Here's the password. Okay, so the audit template. You can grab that. So you can take a picture just now, or you can access that URL, or the slides will be available on Meetup. But it's a 30-odd page template. It's a Google Doc. So you can copy it to your own one, or you can download it as a PDF or a Microsoft document or an open office document, whatever you want. And that'll give you a template of things to do. So it's a structured template for the website audit. Okay, so here's how I structure what I do when I'm going through the audit. And the way this is structured is it's easier for the clients to follow through. It's kind of a logical step process for them. I've chopped and changed this over the years, but this one seems to sit pretty well with clients at the moment. There we go. So here's the structure. Cover page, table of contents, introduction, audit objectives, methodology, and I'll go through some of these in a second. Emoji key mappings, I like to make it a little bit fun. But this is the meat of it, is the detailed findings and analysis. That's the majority of the report. So within that analysis, here's the subtopics that I go through. So WordPress core and settings, themes, plugins, site performance and speed, SEO and content analysis, your Google SaaS stuff, security, backup and recovery, database health, mobile responsive, compliance, legal and accessibility. So it's not a fully comprehensive audit. It's not everything, but those are the topics that seem to resonate the most with the clients and the feedback that I get after 500 audits. And then final sections, very important, recommendations and action items, next steps, contact information.
So just as a question, if
Yep.
let's say someone wants to get an audit done by you, but they want you to specifically focus on certain things, which probably you're not offering,
Yep.
can they still do that?
Absolutely.
How does that work?
This forms the basis, the core of the audit. Oh dear.
For instance, my website
Yep.
just does not perform. It performs, but it's the speed is one of the issues.
Yep.
And if I want to get someone to look into that, my first agenda is to get it running.
Yep.
It's an e-commerce website to make sure that it's performing really well.
Yep.
And from my perspective, speed is the most important part, apart from, of course, SEO and content.
So this would be my core offering that was suitable for generic websites.
Okay.
If someone came to me to say, I like what you've got there, but I call that an extended website audit. And that's the one I offer for 1,000, 1,500. And we will have a little meeting at the beginning and we'll go through what we need here and what additional stuff we need or what we don't need. So they get to customize the audit.
One is SEO audit.
Yep.
Sorry, one is site audit, and the other one is implementing that audit. Do you implement as well, or that's
No,
separate?
That's separate. So this is just audit. When you do audit, if you ever have a company and you get auditors in, they will charge you a lot of money to tell you what's wrong, and then they'll sit down and say, okay, right, here's what it's going to cost you to put it right. So an audit document is just telling you what's right and what's wrong. Okay, and I'll go through the process after that. So those are the final sections, recommendations, next steps, contact information, and I have an appendix A, which I use GT metrics to get the speed stuff. But I'll take you through some of these sections just now. I wish this thing would work. Okay, so here's the process and some of the details of the sections. I'm not going to go through all of them, skip through the first ones, but one of the ones I have is methodology. And in the methodology, I put the tools in there. And customers really like this because they don't have to sit down, they don't have to accept a proposal for work for me. That audit document is a deliverable in its own right with action steps. So I give them the tools that I use to perform that analysis so they can go and perform that analysis for themselves and get additional information for there. So I include the tools. I've got some plugins, Query Monitor. If I don't have access to their hosting, then plugins like PHP Admin and File Manager allow me to get access to the database and the files. And WP Optimize is in the database as well, and just general things. Some of the services software that I use, GTmetrix. There's one called Accessibility Checker, the Google Analytics and Search Console, of course. And I use a couple of Chrome and Chrome extensions to perform this audit as well. So developer tools, Chrome Lighthouse for speed and things. There's a little extension called Mobile First, which you can put the website into any type of mobile device and it shrinks it, all different sizes. So iPhone, Samsung 22, all that sort of stuff. Loom for recording, and SEO Minion for the SEO little reports and things that I do. So that's the general tools that I use. I've got an emoji key mappings. I like to keep things nice and visual, a little bit fun as well and less boring. So I've got these 5 emojis. The green tick is all good, nothing to do. Then I split down some tasks that need to be performed. The spanner is a client task, so they can go do it themselves. They don't have to get anyone else. The hammer and the spanner is, like, it's a bit more complex. You're probably going to need to get a developer or someone or me, to do it for you. And then there's a couple of icons that I use to address the urgency. One is a warning, if there's an an issue that needs to be addressed like soon. And then there's the alarm that says, don't fix this today. Your website's going to be vulnerable and probably crash. So I use these throughout the document just to keep things light. Here's a rough format of the sections that I use within that detailed analysis. So I've got a section title, then we've got the task that I perform, and then there's always a recommendations for improvement at the end. So each part of the analysis I do, I've got all the sub activities that I do, and then a recommendation at the very end that the client can just look at. So here's one of those tasks, the WordPress core and settings. Again, this is not the complete document template, but you'll see that when you copy it. So what I do is I map the current available WordPress version that's out there that you can download and their WordPress version. And the graphics in here is loosely based on the last 3 audits that I've done, which have been a bit of a mixture of, and yeah, it's been okay. So I go through the WordPress settings, so not plugin settings. These are the core WordPress settings. So general, writing, reading, discussion, media, permalinks, and privacy. And I use my icons here. And clients love this because you can visually see exactly what's wrong. They ignore the green ticks because that's good, and then they focus on the warnings. So for this one, I've put a red signal against the WordPress version because it's super out of date. Settings reading, so I'll put it down here. So I'll put, this is a my action here because WordPress is very out of date, so it needs to be updated. But because it's so out of dated, they're probably going to need help, otherwise it's likely to crash or conflict with plugins. For the settings readings in this example here, I'll put that down just as a client task, but it's urgent. So this is where you go into settings, reading, and somebody's checked that little discourage search engines. I had a client come to me and they didn't understand why nobody was coming to them. Had a quick look in there, that was checked, and they had no Google indexing at all. So they were horrified. They said that they would quite happily pay me a couple of $1,000s just for that one thing from the report. So that's an example there, and the last one there, this is settings permalinks. Again, this has happened. I went into clients' WordPress sites, and they're still using the plain, which is the $P equals and the post ID, which is terrible for SEO. So that's an example of how I'd lay things out, particularly in the core settings. And this is the part where, in the 20-minute post-audit Zoom, this is what you're going over, the recommendations for improvement. This is what you explain to the client why it's wrong and what needs updated. So this is where you can soft sell them, warm sell them on a proposal for me or for yourself to do that work afterwards. So we have a little bit of discussion as to what it is, how complex it is, what it might look like to implement it. So they've got an idea if they want to go ahead and take on work from myself or from another one. They've got an idea of how complex it is and how long it's going to take to do. Next one is plugins, probably the largest part of the analysis. This is actually actual stats. So I lay it out to say you have 102 total plugins. Active plugins I deal with first. In this instance, I had 87 active plugins. So what I do is I go down each plugin, and this is the format I have. So the plugin name, that'd be the name. So for example, Yoast SEO. I have a short description of what the plugin does, because you'll be surprised how many business owners just install things, or they inherit a business, or it's a team of people, and they have no idea what that plugin does. So a short description as to what it does.
Is it unusual to have that many plugins?
No. Yeah, really. Really. A file path, which they might not find useful, they might do, but it just tells them exactly where that plugin is if they're mucking around with the file engine. And then 3 yes or no ones. So is it required? In other words, if you delete that thing, will your website crash? Yes or no? Is it supported from WordPress? So plugins that are over 2 years old and automatically flagged in WordPress.org is probably not supported anymore. But I'll have a look at the WordPress.org file to see if they are or not. And then it needs an update. So is it out of date? Yes or no? So that little bit of information, we can go through those and discuss the plugins and see what they want to do with those.
Are you trying to answer required? Or are you
Yes. No. Yeah.
Because that's sometimes pretty difficult to determine.
If you get some plugins that I haven't heard of, then yeah, you have to do a little bit of research, but mostly from the name and the description of the plugin, you get a rough idea as to what they are and how they're being used in the website for that. But I know the majority of the plugins that people use, I know what they're doing after 10 years.
But like sometimes you see like 5 slideshow plugins.
Yeah.
And so you're like, I'm not really sure which ones are required to you now as opposed to...
Yeah, so there's a couple of hacks you can do for that. One is Query Monitor. So you can run stuff to Query Monitor and have a look at the MySQL queries that are going in and infer as to what plugins is being used. You can run a search to the database, so you can have a look at the plugins that have shortcodes. I can run through the database and look for the shortcode in the content and to try and identify it. And if you can't, that's okay. I just flag it as, I don't know what that is. Let's review that and see if you know what it is. Because sometimes somebody will have installed something like, oh yeah, that does this one thing on this obscure page over there. Fine.
So if you identify the plugin is not supported, would you recommend some alternative?
Yeah.
You would.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's a vulnerability. If it's not been updated, then old stuff could have bugs in them. It's not getting fixed. And people have a vector into your website. Again, I do the same for inactive plugins. They should all be deleted anyway, but I list them down there so that the client can see. Again, I don't do anything in the audit. It's just purely look and comment. And then at the end, recommendations for improvement. So here's some examples of things that I've done in the past. So the client only, they can review and remove all active plugins themselves. For myself, it's a complex, so review and reduce the overall number of plugins. I think that's what you were saying. So if you've identified plugins, maybe you've got 4 page builders in there, really only should have 1. I've got that in there down here. Then you can talk to the client, you can review it with myself, and I can make recommendations for that. Things like, example, plugin name is active, but it's not being used, so remove it. Again, that's something the client can do quite safely. Something that's complex and critical is that something's been active, but it's not been supported for 5 years, so it needs to seek a replacement for that. It's active, so it's being used, but you should probably find a replacement for that. Again, I think this is the one that you were asking about, the client one. Unsure if plugin name is being used, no idea. So this is a review for them. Please review and provide me with additional information. Again, that's something the client can do themselves. Yeah, and the last one, I've had a website with 5 page builders on it. So yes, multiple active page builders. Again, complex because you got to migrate from one to the other. You know, there's content probably in all of them. So that's a more complex task. So plugins, if you're doing a site audit, is going to be your most time-consuming part of the process because you're trying to figure out what they are, especially if you're new and you haven't seen a lot of plugins. You'll probably have to go find the plugin name on wp.org, see what it does, and to kind of infer if it's being used or not. So that's the most time-consuming part of an audit is the plugins. So site performance, so speed, basically. I use GTmetrix. So I've got a paid account, like the first paid account for those. So I will run the home page through GTmetrix unless the client has specified additional notes that there's a particular page or pages that they want me to focus on. Otherwise, I always focus on the home page because that's the biggest site traffic that people normally get. First thing I do is I've got a bit of text in the document that links out to 2 blogs from GTmetrix. One is to learn about all the report scores, all the information. I do provide some, but they can then look at the report and understand it better by going out to that blog because some of the metrics are a little bit confusing to understand. And the second one is a blog post that says, don't stress on perfect scores. Because everyone wants to do 100 and 100. And if you stress on that, you're just going to go nuts.
What does the paid account do?
What does the
paid account, like, what does it offer?
It offers you a little bit more deeper insights, but the link for the report, so when you generate a report, you get a little link that you can go back and see later. The free one only has 1 week, so you've only got 1 week for the free report. The paid one gives you a month, I think, which is a little bit better. So our clients are usually busy. They might get to this report a week or 2 later. If it's a free version, then they can't get to that link anymore. So this one's all about GTmetrix grade. So let's talk about the site performance, and I color code it again with the little emojis. So tick is good, warning's bad, red flashy light is awful, needs to get seen to. I talk about the structure, so it's a structure score. So it analyzes the content as to how Google can address it and how well it's displayed. So I take their score. This one here is 84. I should have a tick next to that. Mostly this tells you about the theme when you're running the GTmetrix. So it's looking at your theme, also look at plugins, but it can look at your theme as well. If you get a really low score, it's usually more based on the theme. So it may be time to look for upgrading the theme or a better theme. I look at Google Core Web Vitals because they are important. They feed into the Google SEO page rankings. So I have a little bit about the Core Web Vitals. I have the screenshot there, but I talk about the largest contentful paint, total blocking time, and cumulative layout shift. I've got links in there that link out to other documents that explain what that actually means. I don't include that in Audit, I just link out to blog posts that say, here's what they mean, so they can understand it a little bit better. So because the reports in GTmetrix are short-lived, so they're a week if they're free, a month I think if you're on that paid level, what I do is I copy all the report stuff and put it in an Appendix A, okay, just so the client's got that at hand. You can get most of that stuff in there. But I think there is one that's kind of as a waterfall that shows you how things load in, and that's got a little scroll in it, so I can't kind of get that in. But most of the graphics, the top parts are the ones they want to concentrate on anyway. So they can look at GTmetrix reports in that appendix if they can't get to that report. A little bit of a tip here. If you are copying stuff from other websites, especially ones that have got tabs and stuff in it, rather than take a screenshot and kind of clip it and get different sizes, what you can do is if you're using Chrome, you can right-hand click into the developer tools and click on Inspect. That separates the website and it shows you the HTML and console and stuff. You can actually navigate to the HTML element of the block you want to include, right-hand click, and there's something called Capture Node Screenshot, and it just takes a screenshot of what's selected, and you can just copy and paste it into your documents. So I love using that little thing. Sometimes it's a bit quirky, but most times it works. So for this one, I just had that on the developers mode. I just clicked on summary, right-hand clicked, capture node screenshot, and I did the one for performance, structure, and waterfall as well. So I've got that information to hand when they're looking at it. Because these have got detailed instructions. This was pretty good. well, that's my website. It's pretty good for this, saying low, 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 but sometimes you get orange or red. So it's giving them information as to what they can do to improve that score as well. Again, it's not part of that audit to improve it. It's just highlighting the issues that are there. But GT Metrics Report, I like it. I do run Lighthouse as well, which is in the Google Developer Tools. That's just as a comparison to make sure they're not too wildly off. They're 99% usually roughly the same. But GT Metrics is more visual, appealing for the clients. So I move on to SEO and content analysis. First thing I have in this section is I use Google itself. I'm putting the browser command site : and then the domain name. And that searches Google for that particular domain name. So it'll come up and show you how many roughly results it has for that particular thing. So I always put the client's domain in there, do a little screenshot. Google have removed the number of results, which you can see at the bottom right. They removed that from the normal results. So when you did Google something, it used to tell you how many results. They've got rid of that. So you need to click on the tools now. It shows you how many results. But this is the one that I used for the client that had that search engine disabled thing. And it came up with zero results. They were horrified. Sitemaps as well are important to feed into Google Search Console. It's quite good because WordPress has its own sitemaps now as an XML. But a large percentage, maybe 70% of people don't even have Google Search Console linked to their website. Therefore, they haven't got the index, so you know what an index is. So I tell them where it is. And there's a little blurb there to say, here's how to index it within Google Search Console so that it's a faster index of the stuff in your website. If they're running Yoast or one of the other plugins, then I'll link to that one as well, because that takes precedence over the WordPress one. So again, staying with SEO and content analysis, I look at content. This is where I switch to SEO Minion. It's my little Google Chrome extension. It's really, really good for just simple SEO, top-level SEO on-page stuff. So I'll have a look at the site content and structure. I don't have an image for that there, but it shows you the content style. It is. So you can see if it's a nice flowing style, if it's using a heading 1 with a paragraph, then a heading 2 is a paragraph, heading 3 paragraph, or is it all over the place, or do they have like 10 H1s or no H1s at all? So this little tool gives you a very good overview of that. And then it got drill down things. So on-page SEO, it can tell you things like what the URL is, what the title is, what the description is, if there is any. So this is where, there's quite a lot of businesses that don't understand you need to put the title into the homepage. So it just comes up with what WordPress has. So again, that's a fix. So I go through these. So site structure is good for this one, a green tick. Only one H1 tag, which is good, and good use of H2, H3, H4s as well. So a little summary to them. And just a little note here, a warning, is that most posted pages are missing the SEO description. And just to link out to, that's important because that's what comes up in Google search results, just so they know and understand that. I do the same with images, because images are important. All these are ranking factors, even if they're small ones in the Google search results. So improving these just gives you that edge over your competitor if they have the same thing. So same thing with images. 9 out of 10 times, businesses don't bother with alt tags or titles, so this usually comes back in the big red. You say, okay, you've got 500 images on your homepage, none of them have got alt tags or titles. So again, that's something for them to do. If they've got an SEO plugin, I'll put it in this section here and just have a look to see if they're using it. And I tell them, here's the 3 top ones if they don't. So Rank Math, SEO Press, or Yoast SEO. And I've got a little bit of information in the template, just, it links out to the website and tells them the benefits of using an SEO plugin rather than not. So all the Google SaaS, software as a service stuff. I always check to see if Google Analytics, Tag Manager, and Search Consoles been linked with the website. Quite often, as of late, the last few audits that I've done, the Google Analytics has been linked, but they haven't updated their universal to the Google Analytics version 4. So I've actually not receiving any data. You'd be surprised, sometimes marketing teams only go in, or small business owners only go in every 6 months to have a look at their analytics to see what they're like. Again, one customer went in and it was like blank, and they asked me why is that happening. Okay, let's do a site audit. We found out that they've still got the old Google profile. So we switched that over to Google Analytics version 4. If they don't, then I'll tell them how to add it in, and that'll be another proposal, another bit of work for them. Tag Manager. Tag managers usually use more, I think, in sales and marketing people. So they can trigger events and call to actions and things like that. So it's not always connected, but I'll highlight it if it isn't because it's useful. And Search Console. So a lot of clients don't understand the difference between Google Analytics and Search Console. So I've got a little blurb in the document that tells the difference. So Google Analytics is all your visitors. Google Search Console basically tells you all the problems with your website that Google will have that has a negative effect on the search rankings. So always keep an eye on Search Console. I tell the clients, go in there every month, every couple of months, see if there's errors, address them. It'll help your rankings. And then a little recommendation always at the end of those. So for example, this one, it would be a complex task to migrate over to Google Analytics version 4. So that'd be something that I propose that they do and get help with. Something that they can do, they can review whether they need Google Tag Manager involved. And again, another complex one is Search Console needs to be connected. That requires a little bit of code to put in your domain name or in the header and footer. That's usually above most clients' ability to do because it's adding code and stuff to a theme. So again, I'd recommend help with that one. Okay, so just briefly, 4 other bits of the audit, but I've not expanded on them. So security, the task would be have a look to see if they've got a plugin, a security plugin installed. So I recommend WordPress.
Can I ask you on the Search Console, on the previous slide?
Yeah.
Are we referring to the console that you typically see on developer mode, or is that?
No, that's a Google Search Console.
Google Search Console.
Google Search Console. Yeah.
There's a specific tool called Google Search Console that is a web interface that lets you see all these stats about like 400 errors and whatever that Google is seeing.
It'll say things like these pages are not very good on mobile. Right. And that you go and address that. So it might tell you a button's out of place or something like that. Go and move it further in. And all these things are negative to your search results. So if you can get 0 errors in Google Search Console, then you're better than competitors, guaranteed. Okay, so security plugin, always recommend that you have one in there. You should be okay relying on your host, but I like to have that extra bit of protection. I like the information that it gives me as well. I like to wake up in the morning, check my websites and see that it's secured me from 3,000 logins from WPSydney every night. So I always recommend a security plugin. I have a look at their SSL certificate. I have a look at their expiry. Is it auto-renew or is it coming up for expiry? Who do they have it with? Are they paying for it? Which it shouldn't be. So that's the sort of stuff I cover in there. Also mixed content. So sometimes I get a client that says, I've got an SSL content, but it still comes up with a warning and I don't understand why. And that's because they've got an image in their homepage or another page that's being linked as HTTP rather than HTTPS. All it takes is one in that whole page that's not using HTTPS, and you get this little warning that says, well, it doesn't tell you, it just has a little warning, and that can affect customer confidence, especially if it's an e-commerce website. So that's why I look for mixed content as well. File and folder permissions, crazy cheap web hosts. If people have problem uploading files in Media Manager, then they just change the folder permission to 777. Which means anything can do anything, and it's an easy fix, but it's really bad for security. So I always check all the folders that's got the right permissions, which is 664 for files and 755 for directories. It's a quick thing for me to do. I do it in WP content on the uploads just to make sure everything's fine there. Then I do a site health check. So that's the tools in WordPress. It's actually rather good. So it tells you your MySQL database version, your PHP version. It tells you whether or not services are running okay within WordPress. It's a quick and easy place to have a look at to see if there's any kind of underlying issues with the website or the host version as well. So I copy and paste that in there. Again, I don't do anything. I just highlight it to the client. What will go left, right? Database health. So I do the same thing in the database. If I don't have access to PHP admin on the host side, I'll use a tool called WP Optimize and WP PHP My Admin, which gives me access to the database within WordPress. And with those two tools, I should put the other one in there. I basically tell them what the database size is. Is it a healthy size? Is it like a terabyte, which is crazy? I have a look at the character sets and coalition. If you don't understand that the database is basically a whole set of tables. Tables have lots of rows. But the way it stores that information, you can use different character sets, for example, of different languages, and different coalitions with different storage mechanism. They should basically all be the same, and they should all have the same character sets. What I tend to find is you get a lot of mixed stuff. When people be migrating from hosts to different hosts, databases are different types, different sets and coalitions, and that can result in strange characters in the content. So I had one client come to me and say they moved host, and now they've got all these like strange umlaut characters or inverted A characters all the way throughout the content. And that was because they migrated from one table character set coalition to a different one. And in that process, it tried its best to translate it, but it didn't work. So that's something I look at. I highlight the non-WordPress core tables for them. I try and identify if there's any unused tables. It's not sometimes it's quite a difficult job, but I try my best. And then I look at transients and revisions. So WordPress out the box stores unlimited revisions. So if you've got a 10-year-old website, it's been storing every single edit since 10 years ago, which leads to database bloat. They can all get deleted. And transients as well. They're temporary cache in the database, which should get deleted automatically, but don't. So you can end up with tens of thousands of those if you've got, for example, WooCommerce or some sort of membership site in there. And that, again, extends the database size. The larger the database, the longer it takes to query, the slower WordPress is. So all this is performance. Backups, again, is there a plugin doing the backup or are they relying on the host? I always recommend a plugin. So you can store, and where is it being stored? A lot of people just store it on the website itself, which is terrible because if that gets down, you've got nothing. So have a look at where that zip file is being stored. Always recommend it's stored somewhere else. How often is it backed up? Schedule and frequency. So is it daily, monthly, weekly, that sort of thing. And I match that to the type of website that they have. If it's an e-commerce website, I would say you want real-time backups, if not definitely daily. If it's a blog, then monthly is fine if it's an inactive blog. So I'll give a bit of recommendation on that. And what recovery process is in place? So is it the host? Do they call them? Do they pay for it? If you've got a plugin, how does it restore? Do you just download the zip file and you're on your own as to restore it? Or does it have like a button where it automatically downloads it and installs it over the website? So I just let the client know what the recovery process is, because most of them don't. You only really use backups when stuff hits the fan. And if you've got no recovery process or it's a complicated one, you're a bit stuffed. So it's good to know that stuff. Lastly, mobile responsiveness. So your websites are being indexed mobile first. So it's good to know if it's working on mobile. So I use a few tools here. Some of it's within GTmetrix that measure the mobile as well. But mostly I use a little extension called Mobile First, which is the one that you can choose the different types of devices that it shows you. So I generally do iPhone 13, although it always kind of goes up every 6 months in the new model, or every year. And Samsung Galaxy S22 is my two current base models. So I'll run them through those two, see if there's any issues in alignment for those. And I'll use Loom, or I think actually Mobile First has a record feature now. And I'll scroll through them and then save that into Loom or that one and grab the little GIF. They do a little animated GIF so you can see the scrolling through, which then links to the actual video file. So I include the animated GIFs within the report. So a little bit of interactivity that people can see what's happening. We're getting towards the end. So compliance, a lot of these people leave out. I don't understand that a lot of them are actually required, technically, legally, on websites in Australia. You need to have a privacy policy and terms, so terms and conditions or terms of sale or something like that. You actually legally need to have those two if you've got a business website in Australia. Otherwise, if you have a data breach and you don't have one of those, or if you do something wrong and you don't have one of those, big trouble. So I just go through them all to see which ones they have, which ones they don't. Some other ones are disclaimer. If you allow comments on a website or a client website, you should have a comment policy. So if anyone leaves hate speech or that sort of stuff as a comment, you're not liable. That's basically what it says. A code of conduct. So if you organize events like this, you should have a code of conduct link on your website. Plagiarism and copyright. You definitely need a statement for that. You don't want people copying the stuff. Sometimes they will do, but then this covers you to say, well, you shouldn't because I've got that there and you should have read it. If you've got...
if that happens, how do you monitor that plagiarism and copyright? Isn't it difficult?
It's not something that you would actively monitor unless you've got people that do that. Yeah. It's more somebody would probably come to you to say, oh, I've already seen that on the website, or I found a link that looks very similar to yours. So that's usually when it comes up. When somebody highlights, oh, you know, that service or that thing that you're doing, I found it on somebody else's website. There are tools where you can look for plagiarism, copyright, but in general, for most of the businesses I work with, it's word of mouth. They hear that someone's copied their stuff. For an e-commerce website or membership website, shipping policy and returns policy as well is mandatory. That's required. Otherwise, you know. And if you work with European sites, clients, or you target European individuals specifically, or products for European citizens, then you need to adhere to GDPR. Otherwise, again, big trouble. It's a law. It's legal. So you don't have to apply or comply with GDPR if you're an Australian website, if you're not targeting goods and services for European citizens. It's not required, but as soon as you do focus directly on Europe, then even though you're in Australia, you need to comply with GDPR. And that includes the cookies and all that sort of stuff. Accessibility. So I run the website through two tools. One is called Accessibility Checker, another one is called Wave. They both do the same thing, but visually they're a bit different, highlight some different aspects. So I ran mine through and found out I'm not compliant. Yay! It's actually, I've got a Clean Talk, which targets spammy comments and forums. It gets rid of that spam. They put a little animated GIF, tiny, like 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 pixel, so they can monitor the pages. It picked up on that to say that they can't pause that little animated GIF. So technically I'm compliant-ish. But it gives a nice overview, very top level overview of how compliant you are for accessibility standards. There.
Is that a plugin for WordPress?
This is a service, Accessibility Checker.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's a website.
It's a website that you run it through. Yeah. The next one does something similar. The interface isn't as nice, but it highlights more stuff, more information. So you kind of give and take. This goes down for a long while. But this is Wave. And again, you put in the website address. You can leave the styles on, so it looks like your website, or you can get it off, and you just get what Google sees rather than what humans see. But again, it gives you lots of alerts and features, contrast errors, structural elements, and ARIAs. That's your speech synthesizers that it runs through. So you get a lot more detailed information off there. So I do these two reports and then just comment on some of the main issues for those. And that's the meat and bones of the audit that goes through. So this is what we've looked at today: the time, cost, and deliverables, the sales process that I use to sell this as a service, the audit template, so you can download that. I'll put the links up on Meetup. The audit structure, so that core bit of analysis that I use, and the audit process as well, the step-by-step structure. Now, I've moved these things up and down, and from client feedback, the order I've got it just now seems a logical order for them to navigate through, go step by step. So that seems to work really, really well, but I'm always tweaking it. I'm always moving it around, I get feedback from the client, so I'll add extra stuff in or take something out if it's too much. I used to have almost double in there, but I pared it back. Now, if they want anything extra, it's a extended audit with a higher price tag. So that's it. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them just now. Yes.
So if its site is compromised and there's a backdoor, how you actually compare the files? To find out any compromised backdoors in the site.
Yeah, that's difficult. I used to do that as a separate service. It takes hours. It can take hours. Sometimes you'll never find it because you need access to server log files that the host maybe won't give you access to. So sometimes it's impossible as a consultant or developer to exactly find out where it is. But the process for rebuilding is to clean the database, so the SQL files. So you're looking for known infections. That's bits of text in there for there. So you want to make sure your database is clean because people can inject vulnerabilities into the database itself. So even if you rebuild the stuff with the old database content, there can still be a backdoor in there. So it's important to clean the database, but you're basically looking for a complete rebuild. So what my process was after cleaning the database as much as I could, you zap the whole website content and you build it back up from the proper downloads. So you download WordPress from WordPress.org, install that. You download Yoast from WordPress.org, download that. Premium plugins, you log into where they got them, download the source file and update that. So you're not backing up from a backup if you got breach up, unless you know exactly when that occurred. Because sometimes people can embed vulnerabilities and then they might not action that for months later. So you have no idea where that vulnerability is in your backup set. So yeah, it's a complete restore. I used to do that for, I think it was $750. Sometimes it'd be quick, sometimes it would take me days. The easiest way to do that now is to use Sucuri, S-U-C-U-R-I, Sucuri. And I think for 100 US bucks, they will clean your website and make sure it's free. And if it happens again, then they'll redo it for free afterwards. So that's probably the quickest, easiest way to do that. Does that answer your question? It's difficult. I don't offer that very anymore. It's too stressful. Any other questions? Yeah.
What's the link to the link to getting the copy of this?
I'll put it on the meetup page. So tonight's meetup page, I'll put the link to the presentation in there, and in the Facebook page.
Have a Facebook account?
Yeah. It's WordPress Sydney Meetup. It's a group. Stefan, you had a question? Cool.
For the accessibility checker, is that a free tool? And is it ARIA specific, or are there different accessibility standards?
They're both free, those tools. This one's more visual compliance. This one here, Wave, does focus on ARIA stuff. So it scrolls down for about 500 years down that way, this page. So that's why you don't see that stuff. It actually takes a snapshot of your entire page and then overlays it with all the issues. So the longer your page, the bigger the document is. But it does cover ARIA stuff on that one. This one does too, but it's just not as comprehensive as the Wave is. Even though Wave just looks ugly, but it does the job. Yeah,
I was just going to say, the Wave tool does a really good job of explaining problems in English.
Yeah.
Like not in, so like the other ones often just grab parts from the accessibility guidelines and are like 2.3.2.4, here's your text. And you're like, I don't really get what that means.
Yeah.
But like the Wave tool, under that details tab, it'll tell you, here's the problem in like a single sentence or a couple of sentences, and then it will say, do you want to learn more? And then you can go to their website and it gives you a couple of paragraphs and then links back to the actual spec.
Yeah.
So
This
really good.
Probably the best tool for fixing accessibility. This one's better for just going, okay, I'm not compliant. All right, I need to do something. It's got a few additional stuff down below. Again, I've chopped it off But if you want a comprehensive, accessibility is one of your core musts, then Wave is probably the best tool for that. No. There we go. That's me. Any other questions? I think there's one more. Yep.
So, getting back to security issues and stuff that's being reviewed, I'm not sure if this question is one that you can answer, but if you're building multiple websites, is it a bad idea to essentially copy one website over to another domain and do it again and again and again versus set up the domain and then add each of the plugins separately from scratch, from brand new? Does that, is there any, I would imagine that the more you copy the old websites across and use those as templates, the more chance you've got problems aggregating over time.
Yeah. What I've got, I use local WP. So that's a tool from Flywheel, the web host. It allows you to run WordPress on your local setup here. It allows you to have blueprints. Blueprints are like a site copy. So I've got about half a dozen blueprints. One's for an e-commerce website, one's for a membership website, one's for a brochureware website, one's for a small business website, and it's got a build, a basic build. So it's got Gravity Form, WordFence security. It's all the stuff that I use, advanced custom fields in there, ready to go. And I use that as a template. Yeah. And when I'm doing a new client website, some things might be out of date. So I'll use the blueprint, spin it up, and it'll tell me which plugins are out of date. I update them all and then save that back as another blueprint. So that next time I've got an updated blueprint. But that's how I deploy my sites. So I've got templates, blueprints for basic types of websites that I can then just spin up. And these are all the things I'd put in anyway, manually, but it just saves me a ton of time because it's already installed and ready to go. So that's kind of my base blueprints.
I would just like to know if you're gonna put a list of all the tools that you use. Just I think I could use that. Like it would be really helpful. Just like research and use it.
For this?
Just the tools that you use for when you
to develop websites, or
no, just
for this audit.
For the audit, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a list. It's in the methodology, and there's links to the different plugins as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Is this the Facebook group?
Yeah, that's the one. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much for tonight. See you next month.